Alright, this is part 2 of disassembling an engine. If you didn't watch the first video, this engine here is a 4.0 liter single overhead cam Ford engine. And this engine had a timing chain failure, so the engine jumped time and it had a couple valves hit the pistons. When that happened, the valves got bent and it lost compression. It had little to no compression in 2 cylinders. This video we're going to disassemble the lower end. In the last video we took the heads off, the cams, and the front pump, or the front cover, my bad. So one thing I wanted to talk about before we flip this engine over is show what it looks like with the heads off an engine. These of course are your pistons, and you can see right there where the valve had hit the piston. These here are water jackets. That's where your coolant flows through to keep the engine cool. Your water pump pumps and it constantly flows through those jackets. And when a head gasket blows, I'm sure everybody's heard the term of a blown head gasket, you'll lose the material between the head gasket and the water jacket. So coolant will get into your combustion chamber and therefore get burnt, or exhaust gases will get into the cooling system and pressurize the cooling system. And you'll know you have either or. If you have coolant getting in and getting burnt, the engine will run rough. But if you have exhaust getting into the water jackets, you'll see a white crust around your radiator cap or your degas bottle. So just one thing to think about. Now we're going to flip this engine over and take the girdle off. Now we have the engine upside down, and you may have noticed that I said this engine has a girdle, which a lot of gas engines don't have. Some German vehicles have them, but this was a German design engine. It's from Cologne, Germany. That's why it's like this. It has even though it was in a domestic car, it has a German design, so it has this girdle. And what that basically means is, instead of having main bearing caps, it has the girdle to hold the crankshaft in place with bearings in the girdle. Now we're going to remove all the 10mm bolts around this lower oil pan. Check it out. Now with the lower oil pan off, you can see kind of what we're dealing with here. If you look inside here, all them particles are metal particles from when the timing chain failed. It ate into the front cover, and the front cover is aluminum, so a steel chain against an aluminum front cover, the steel chain's going to win. And see, we got a piece of plastic right there. That's from the timing chain guide. But this is just the lower oil pan. You can see the drain bowl right there. That's what you take out in order to drain your oil. So let's set that out of the way and look at what we got going on in here. This here is your pickup tube. That's where your oil pump picks up oil and circulates it through the engine, so it makes its way through the connecting rod bearings, crankshaft main bearings, and your cylinder heads. And here's your 8 bolts, that hold the girdle on, along with all these 10mm bolts all the way around the perimeter. So we're going to remove that next and go from there. Now with the girdle off, we can kind of see what we're working with here. As you can see here, these are your main caps. That's what holds your crankshaft to the engine block. And this right here, you don't see this on a lot of American cars. It's a counterbalance. And with the Explorers and the Rangers, supposedly they only put these in 4-wheel drive vehicles, but this engine came out of a 2-wheel drive Explorer. So, in my opinion, it's kind of pointless, but the new engine I put in there, it had a counterbalance shaft on it too, and I took the chain off and it ran just fine. No vibrations whatsoever. Down here, this is your oil pump. It's driven by this counterbalance shaft. So as this spins, it's geared to the oil pump. So as it spins, it will create oil pressure and lubricate your connecting rod bearings, your main rod bearings, and the rest of the engine. So let's go ahead and take these main caps off and then we can get to the connecting rods. Let's take the counterbalance shaft and the oil pump off too. Now that we got the counterbalance shaft and the oil pump out of the way, we can go ahead and remove the main caps and the connecting rod caps. I already pulled one off. Let's look at the bearing real quick. As you can see, there it goes, focused. There's some light scoring. Nothing I can catch my nail on though. Usually these are brass with a coating on it, so once they start to get worn out, you'll be able to see the brass underneath that silver coating. I'm not sure what the silver coating is. Comment if you do know what it is, inform me. But this was in good shape. This groove through the middle is where the oil rides. So let's go ahead. I'll go ahead and remove the other main caps and the connecting rod caps, then we'll take another look. Alright, I went ahead and removed the first connecting rod cap. As you can see, let it focus. Those lines that are cut into that bearing are, it's like what's in the cylinder walls and cross hatching. They hold little droplets of oil. That way the oil creates a film between the crankshaft and the connecting rod bearing. And now we'll go ahead and pop this one piston and connecting rod out and take a look at it. Do that on video real quick. All you need is something to smack it out with, the other side. I'm just using a long 1/2 inch extension. Here's the piston. Just like the other rod bearing, this one's still good. These holes that are cut into the connecting rod, the connecting rods and the bearings and the main caps and the bearings are what oil travels through. So oil travels through there to lubricate the bearing, and it also goes up to the piston and lubricates the wrist pin. The pistons are held on with this pin. It's called a wrist pin. It's held in with clips on each side. But overall, this piston looks pretty good. These rings, this one right here is the compression ring, the one below it's a compression ring, and the one below that is the oil scraper ring. That's what scrapes the oil off of the cylinder walls as the piston's going down, and these two hold the compression. Therefore, it scrapes the oil off the cylinder walls to keep it from burning off, and also holds the combustion pressure when the explosion happens from the intake stroke and the compression stroke and the power stroke. So we'll pop all these other pistons out and then we'll look at the crank. Alright, now we have all the pistons, all the connecting rods out, so now theoretically the crankshaft should just pull out since we have all the main caps out. You may notice the harmonic balancer is still on the crankshaft, and that's just because I couldn't get it off. It broke my puller. So, and this is heavy, so just be prepared for that. For the V8, it's even heavier. Just grab it, pull it out, and set it over here in the scrap pile. And now we have a bare engine block. Now with the crank out, we can look at the main bearing journals. As you can see, these all look pretty good. If it weren't for the timing chain failing and wreaking havoc like it did, this would be a perfectly fine engine. But that timing chain design is garbage. It always will be. That's why a lot of times when timing chain failure happens in any vehicle that has a 4-liter single overhead cam, people just get rid of it or put a new engine in it. And you might ask, why not just replace the timing chain components? Well, one, the engine's an interference engine, so if the valve hits the pistons, you're gonna have to pull the heads off anyway to get them rebuilt, new valves, new guides. Might as well put new seals on them. And to do the timing chain job anyway, you have to pull the engine out since it has a jack shaft and it has one timing chain in the back towards the transmission. It's either that or pull the transmission, which that'd be a pain in the ass because you have no room to work with. So it's easier to just pull the engine. And really the engine's designed to come out easily. I had this engine out in a few hours. But that's all for disassembling an engine and what all goes into it. Please like, comment, and subscribe. I hope I answered any questions with this video. If I didn't, leave a comment and I'll try my best to answer it. Thanks.